U.S. President Barack Obama will serve 4 more years after winning the just concluded elections in the United States. How significant is his victory to the relations of the Philippines and the United States as he completes his first term? What milestones were achieved in ensuring that both the Philippines and the United States remain the best of friends, a special relationship that has undergone so many tests and trials? To date, this friendship has remained solid and strong despite some concerns that arise from time to time. And joining us tonight to provide us an insight on how a continued Obama presidency will impact on RP-US relations is Mr. John Forbes, Chairman of the American Chamber of Commerce in the Philippines. Good evening, sir, and welcome to NewsLife.
Good evening, Robert. It's a pleasure to be here again.
Sir, before we discuss the U.S. elections, how would you assess the attention which the U.S. has given the Philippines under President Obama for the past 4 years? Has the relations between our two countries based on mutual respect 20 years after the basis agreement was terminated by the Philippine Senate?
Well, I wouldn't emphasize the military bases as the primary aspect of the bilateral relationship. We have a long history together that's evolved through conflict during the Second World War and by the immigration of millions of Filipinos to the United States who, like other Asian American immigrants, are among our most educated and productive citizens. So it's a relationship of trade, it's a relationship of mutual practice of democracy. The military aspect of it arose during the course of, as I noted, the Second World War, but also the Cold War. And I would note that unlike countries such as Korea and Japan, the Philippines chose not to have American forces based in its country, and yet it is concerned about maintaining a balance of power in the South China Sea, and that's being worked on through other aspects, joint exercises, ship visits, and of course the defense alliance continues.
So moving on now to the U.S. elections, what is your assessment on the just concluded elections from start to finish, from the campaigns, from the debates, and from the voting? As an independent, sir, what were you looking for with the presidential candidates for you to make your final decision?
Well, I voted since 1965 when I was a senior in college, and I'm an independent, as you noted, meaning that I've worked as a diplomat for 8 presidents of both political parties. So as an independent, you're really looking at the issues. Something I see is often absent as an observer of Philippine politics over the year, where personalities are much more dominant in their appeal to Filipino voters. Issues of foreign policies, issue of domestic policies, and this election was no exception. The main issue was the economy. Foreign policy was not especially prominent. And the U.S. has serious economic challenges which need to be dealt with, and part of it is to achieve a nonpartisan approach. I noted in the acceptance speech of the re-elected President Obama in Chicago that he emphasized that he intended to sit down with his opponent, Governor Romney, and talk about how the two parties can work together.
Sir, the Philippines has a totally different electoral system than the U.S. Can you just give us a brief review of how the elections are done in the U.S.?
Well, it's not totally different. Both countries have a presidential system. We have evolved over more than a century into a two-party system, whereas third parties tend not to they are there. There were more than 2 candidates for president and vice president in this election, as there have been for many years, but third parties don't really stand up very well. Here your parties are not as strong, and although you had the Liberals and Nationalistas in the period up until 1972, you have a multiple number of candidates, and you don't have a runoff, so you can easily have a minority president. The main difference is the Electoral College, however, which goes back to the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, where the smaller states felt that the larger states would be the ones that would elect the president in a pure direct election. So they created something which is fairly unique but reflects the federal nature of the U.S. Governance system, something called the Electoral College. So everyone's confused on this when you're watching on Fox or CNN when they say you need 270 votes to be elected, and then you see that 120 million Americans are going to vote. So the popular vote is quite close, about a difference of a million or so. So it's closer than in the last election 4 years ago. But 270 votes are needed in the Electoral College. The Electoral College is based on one electoral vote for each of the 435 members in the House of Representatives, one each for the 100 senators, and 3 for the district. So you can't have a tie, you have to have a majority, so you need 270 of the 538 electoral. Now, it doesn't actually meet, but each of the 50 state legislative bodies will meet, and they will send the electors, they will name the electors, and then they will certify to the U.S. Congress who these electors vote for. Only 2 states, Nebraska and Maine, well, let me back up. In 48 states, the electoral votes go entirely to the candidate who has a majority of the popular vote. So they're not apportioned between the several candidates. In only Nebraska and Maine, they are divided between the 2. So that's why you see this big distortion, that Obama has 303 and Governor Romney a much lower number, and Florida, at least when I left to come to this studio, had still not been called.
So now that President Obama has won his second term, moving forward, what engagement should our 2 countries develop that should be in our best interest, since some quarters believe that somehow the U.S. has always had the edge over the Philippines?
Well, I don't know what you mean by the U.S. has an edge in the Philippines. The U.S. has this long relationship, but we're only one of a number of countries that are your major trading partners. We're about the same as Japan, and China has become a larger trading partner as that economy has grown very rapidly. We have investors here that have been here. In fact, the American Chamber of Commerce is celebrating its 110th anniversary this year for quite a long time, and these companies usually expand at a healthy amount or percentage every year. You don't see a lot of new companies coming in, but that's unlike, say, Vietnam, which was at war, or Cambodia, which was at war for 40 or 50 years and had very little foreign investment coming in. So there's a large stock of American foreign investment here. We'd like to see more, and we'd like to see more trade relationships. My main concern in this area is the fact that the Philippines is one of the 11 countries negotiating in the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is has the potential to become an APEC-wide free trade area. And there have been 15 or 16 rounds of negotiations, and the Philippines is not among them. And within the ASEAN region, 4 countries, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and Singapore, are negotiating. So I worry about the Philippines being disadvantaged by not being a part of that group.
Sir, having done business here in the Philippines for 20 years, have you seen any major changes in the business atmosphere? Do you see now that are more American investors pouring in more money in the Philippines? President Aquino has gained a lot of respect from President Obama against his crusade against corruption, and given the success, do you see now that the Americans see the Philippines as one of the key destinations for its investments?
No, regrettably not. I think the Philippine investment image has been weak for quite a few years. When an image deteriorates, it takes a while to recover. So under the current administration, the recovery has begun. It has also coincided with a financial crisis of major proportion, the worst since the Great Depression. And so American companies are rich with cash right now, but they're slow to make investment decisions.
Why is that so?
Well, mainly because they're not confident of the strength of growth within the U.S. economy. While it is recovering slowly, it's still relatively weak, and there are problems in Europe to be concerned about. And also within this region, if I can be frank, there are restrictions in the Philippine Constitution that I think investors are looking to see if they're going to be relaxed or not, and that's an area where more investment could come into some of the public utility areas and some other restricted.
And so moving forward, now that President Obama has won his second term, from the past 4 years, what have you seen that has changed, and what do you expect now in the next 4 years from President Obama?
Well, that's a broad question. I mean, the number one area is the economy. In his acceptance speech, the president talked about the need to deal with jobs, the need to reduce the deficit, the need to deal with some other domestic issues. He didn't really talk about foreign policy in his acceptance speech. I do think this change that earlier you quoted a congressman who's a Naval Academy graduate, the congressman from Paranaque, talking about the so-called pivot. Pivot it describes a sharp change in direction. It's really a more gradual change in direction, which will place more emphasis on U.S. policy in Asia, and that's originated in the last couple of years in this administration. We look forward to that continuing. We look forward to closer security relations between the U.S. and the Philippines, and improved trade and more investment in the next few years.
Okay, on that note, thank you very much, sir, for joining us tonight. That was Mr. John Forbes, Chairman of the American Chamber of Commerce in the Philippines. Thank you, sir, for joining us here at NewsLife.
Thank you, and I'm Chairman of the Legislative Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.